Hello. So let's examine CAT 21 slot 3 LRDI. So let's first begin with questions 1 to 6. Now, this was perhaps the most difficult set in this entire LRDI section. Perhaps one of the most difficult sets I have come across in any CAT paper. Okay, so definitely I'm sure students would not have attempted this in the exam. The moment you read through this, so much of information, so many conditions, I'm sure it was a no-no right from the beginning. But since now the answer keys are out and we are trying to analyze the paper, so let us try to solve this. Let's take some time, but with the caveat that in the examination hall, this question could not be attempted. So here there are 10 players, P1 to P10, and it's a javelin throw. If you just quickly go through the points, the event is in 2 phases. Each phase has 3 rounds. So rounds 1 and 2, 3, first phase. Rounds 4, 5, 6, second phase. The distance is measured in meters. A player's score at the end of a round is the maximum distance of all his throws till that round. So if in the first round you hit 80 meters, second round you hit 70, at the end of round 2, your score will be taken as 80. So it's the highest of the lot till that particular round. After every round, the players are re-ranked. So after round 1, whoever is highest after round 1 gets rank 1 for round 2, and who is the lowest after round 1 gets rank 10 in round 2. And like this for every round it continues. But the throw of the order in which they are throwing is different. So first 3 rounds, it says the players throw in increasing order of their latest ranks, which means first rank will throw first, last rank will throw last. But in the second phase, that is rounds 4, 5, and 6, players throw in decreasing order of their ranks. That means the last rank throws first and the best rank throws last. So first 3 rounds is increasing order of ranks, the order of throws, and the last 3 rounds is decreasing order of their ranks. Okay. Finally, at the end of the round 6, the first player gets gold, second gets silver, and third gets bronze. So they've given you some data for round 1. 6 throws are given, and these are only valid throws, which means that the other 4 they have thrown invalid, which means their scores can be taken as 0. Round 2 directly has not been given, but round 2 you have an information here that among the throws in the second round, only the last 2 were valid, which means 8 of them did not throw a valid distance. Both the throws enabled these players to qualify for the second phase, with one of them qualifying with the least score, and none of these players won any medal. So round 2, this information will be critical. We will come to that for round 2. Round 3, again, there are only 3 valid throws, which has been mentioned. So let us now first concentrate on rounds 1, 2, and 3, and then we will move on to the second phase. So what I have done here is I have captured the data which is given for round 1. So round 1, this is the data, which means the other 4 players for who the data is not mentioned, we can assume that they get a 0. Their score is currently 0. 6 players data is provided to us. So now, depending on their distances, we can decide that round 2 who will go first. So round 2, the best player goes first. So here, if you look at the scores, the best player is P7, which means P7 will go first. Next is P5, that's 86.4, the second highest. Third, who will go? Third, it's 84.1, so P9 goes. Then We have 82.9, that's P1. Then we have 82.5, that's P6. We have 81.5, that's P3. So these 6 had valid throws in round 1, and their ranks get fixed for round 2 in order in which they will throw. The other 4, 2, 4, 8, 10, since all of them have equal scores, so their ranks are maintained as it is. It's given that if the scores are tied, the ranks, older ranks will be retained, the preference. So 2, 4, 8, 10 remain that way. Round 2, it says only the last 2 throws are valid. That means the first 8 scores are invalid. So which means P7, if he had a score of 87.2 in round 1, he will maintain an 87.2 in round 2, because round 2 his score is below that. The highest will be retained. Similarly, P5 will retain an 86.4. A P9 will retain an 84.1. A P1 will retain an 82.9. P6 will retain an 82.5. P3 will retain an 81.5. P2, P4 have scored nothing here. P8 and 10 have had valid throws. Which means their scores have definitely improved, because earlier they were 0. Now we'll come to that later, but we know that P8 and 10, and they have not only valid throws, they are qualifying on this basis to the second phase, which means their scores would be pretty high in terms of being in the top 6 after round 3. So that is an important point. Now the next critical information which we have to understand is that, going back to the conditions, about the second point here, if a player throws first in a round and he was also the last to throw in the previous round, which means you throw first in a particular round and you were last in the previous round, then you set to get a double, which means pehle aap last the and next round you become first. From last you become first, then you get a double. 2 players get a double. From last you move to first, that's a double, and 2 such instances of double is mentioned. Okay. Also, in each round of the second phase, which means rounds 4, 5 and 6, exactly 1 player improved his score. Only 1 player in each of these rounds. So out of the 6 players who will throw in rounds 4, 5 and 6, only 1 of them have had a better or improved performance over his past. So that is clear. So now coming back to this double concept, where the last guy of the previous round throws first in the next round, round 1 to round 2, the last guy is P10 in round 1 and first guy is P7 in round 2. So there is no double from round 1 to round 2. That's clear. Now, round 4 to round 5 and round 5 to round 6, there cannot be any double, because round 4 only 1 improvement happens. Round 5 only 1 improvement happens. With 1 improvement, the last thrower cannot become the first thrower. Remember, in round 4, the last thrower is the best person, the highest rank. And round 5, the first thrower will be the worst rank. So for the best player to become the worst player is not possible unless everybody beats him. But it's given in round 4, only 1 player improves. Round 5, only 1 player improves. So if only 1 player improves, the best player out of a lot of 6 cannot become the worst player. Hence, there is no double from down 4 to 5 and from 5 to 6, which means that 2 to 3, I will have to have a double, and a 3 to 4, I will have to have a double, because there are 2 instances of double. 3 to 4 double is automatic, because 3 to 4 the order is reversing. Till 3, you start with the highest, end with the lowest. In 4, you start with the lowest. So 3 to 4 is automatic, that whoever was last in 3 will be the first in 4. So 3 to 4 double is clear. But if 2 to 3 is also a double and P10 was the last thrower in round 2, P10 has to be the first thrower in round 3. That's clear? And if that is true, then P8, you remember, again, I'm coming back to that point where it says one of them qualifying with the least score. So P10 cannot be the least score to qualify because P10 is become the first in round 3. That means P8 is the player who qualifies with the lowest score, which means P8 will be the sixth ranker in round 3, qualifying with the lowest score, and therefore P8 must be the first thrower in round 4. Round 3 mein he is worst, round 4 mein the worst throws first. So I hope you're getting my point. P10 gets a double from 2 to 3 and P8 is getting a double from 3 to 4. That also answers one of the questions later when we will see who scores a double. 8 and 10 score a double. Now, so 10 and 8 come here. Okay, now the other 4 who will qualify between 10 and 8 will be the other top four players, that is 7, 5, 9, 1, P7, P5, P9 and P1. Okay, P7, P5, P9, P1. It's very clear that these 6 have qualified. Absolutely sure. Now, if P8 has qualified, P8 must be more than these 2 players, P6 and P3. P6 is 82.5. That means P8 will be greater than 82.5. That is absolutely sure. P8 will be greater than 82.5 because P8 has beaten P6 in order to qualify. So round 3, if I continue, this will be P6, this will be P3, this will be P2, and this will be P4. These are not very relevant for us because the qualifying is still P8. And if P10 has become the first in round 3, that means after round 2, P10 was the highest. And therefore, P10 score highest means it has to exceed 87.2. So he has to be greater than 87.2. But remember, these 2 have not won the medal final. Neither P10 nor P8. Ye ekdam clear hai. Now, if you come to round 3 scores. 3 valid throws were given. P1 scores an 88.6. So P1 scores an 88.6. P3 scores a 79. Now that's an invalid score because P3 earlier had 81.5. So 79 for him makes no relevance. So uska score 81.5 will be maintained, the higher score. And P9 scores, sorry, P3 scores 79. Sorry, so that is irrelevant. P9 scores 81.4. Again, that is irrelevant because P9 81.4 is much lower than his previous highest of 84.1. So this will be 84.1 maintained. P10 is greater than 87.2. I know that, but I do not know how much. P7 will be 87.2. P5 will be 86.4. And this will be greater than 82.5. P6 will be 82.5. P2 will be 0. P4 will be 0. Round 3 over. First phase is finished. Now, in round 4, now it's evident that P8 will be the first thrower. And the last thrower will be the highest amongst these 6. The highest among these 6 can be P1 or P10. But remember, P10 has not scored a medal. If P10 has not got a medal, it is very evident that P10 score cannot become very high. If you take P10 above 88.6 and yet he has not scored any medal, then there are other 3 players who have to cross 88.6, which is not possible because only 3 improvements are possible after this, 1 in each round, and that too by the same margin. So hence it is clear that P1 will be the highest in round 4. So he will be the last thrower. And then you will have a P7 here. You will have a P5 here. You will have a P9 here. No, I'm sorry, P7, no, P10 here. Sorry, this will be P10 because P10 is more than 87.2. This will be just below P, so that will be P7, and this will be P5, and this will be P9. Sorry, because P10 cannot be the highest, but he has to be the second highest because he is definitely above 87.2. Round 4, one improvement has happened. We know that. I don't know who has improved, but I know now that round 5, the gold medal guy has improved. And in round 6, the bronze medal guy has improved. If you look at the conditions here, it is very clearly mentioned that the gold medal improves in the 5th round, the bronze medal improves in the 6th round, and one medal winner improves in the 4th round. I don't know who that is. That's for sure. But generally, he will be the gold one or silver because bronze will not improve twice typically. Because remember, each time the improvement is by the same amount. So therefore, the gold guy might improve twice in order to become the first, or all three can improve. But that now, one more thing which is important is that 1 meter gap will be between gold, silver, and bronze. So this gap is 1 meter and this gap is 1 meter. Now, if you look at so now I know P8 has finally not won a medal, P10 has not won a medal, which means 9, 5, 7, 1. Out of these 4, that is 1, 5, 7, 9, there will be 3 medal winners. Gold, silver, and bronze. Now, already I know P1 is the highest amongst them. If I leave out P1, remember P5, P7, P9, for them to win the 3 medal winners above 88.6 is not possible. Remember, there can be only 3 improvements. Every improvement is by the same figure X, and the gap between 3 will be only 1 meter each. That means they have to be huddled almost, the values between them should be almost 1 meter gap. So therefore, if you look at the figures, it is evident that P1, P5, and P7 are almost huddled together, and most probably they would become the winners. P9 is way behind, almost 3.2.5, 3-4 points of gap hai for it to cover to that level, and everybody else also increase by the same level, and then again have a gap of 1 meter is not possible. So therefore, it is clear that 1, 5, 7 will be in the 3 medal tally category. Now, so P1 definitely one of the medal winners. Now, if P1 wins the gold, and I know the gold guy has also improved, which means 88.6 further goes up. So that means what will happen? If 88.6 further goes up, and he's already the highest, then 86 and 87, for them to move and only have a gap of 1 meter with him will become very difficult. Because as of now, the gap between P1, P5 or P1, P7 is more than 1 meter. So therefore, if you look at the numbers, it is pretty clear that P1 should typically be the silver medalist. So if P1 is silver and he gets an 88.6, then the gold guy gets an 89.6 and the bronze guy gets an 87.6, given a matter of 1 meter gap. Now, who can get gold? So if 86.4 for him to become 89.6, the jump is 3.2. That's a huge jump. 3.2, even if it is twice, each jump is 1.6. Difficult. But if 87.2 becomes 89.6, so if you look at 89.6 minus 87.2, the gold guy is jumping by 2.4. And if that happens in 2 movements, each movement is 1.2. And 87.6 and 86.4 also have a gap of 1.2, which means P5 must have won the bronze and has an improvement of 1.2. P7 must have got the gold and has an improvement of 2.4, which is divided into 1.2 plus 1.2. So I have 3 movements of 1.2 each, twice by the gold guy and once by the bronze guy, and no movement by the silver guy. So all my properties of gap of 1 meter each and all 3 changes being the same quantum is only satisfied by these values. Now, this is something which you'll have to force fit numbers in the given situation. You cannot put equations and solve this. So it is very clear now that P7 is finally the winner with the gold, and he improves twice. 1.2 meter in which round? In round 4. So P7 earlier had 87.2. Here it will become 88.4. No other improvement. So P8 will remain greater than 82.5, but he will just remain there, no improvement. P9 will remain 84.1. P5 will remain 86.4. P10 will remain greater than 87.2, and P1 is 88.6. So now the realignment, it's clear now that here you will get P7, because P7 has an 88.4. No, still it is P1. No, it's not P7, because P1 still is 88.6. So he will still remain here. But P7 becomes an 88.4. So P7 comes here. P10 will come here. P5, P9, and P8. These are not very critical for the values, but I know that in round 5, again, P7 will go up till 89.6. P1 is 88.6. P10 will remain. P5 is 86.4. In the next round, P7 is the last thrower because he was the highest after round 5. P1 is 88.6. And P5 improves by 1.2 and he becomes 87.6. So this is the gold, this is the silver, and this is the bronze. And you will have a P8 here, you will have a P10 here, and you'll have a P9 here. I'm not getting to the value, that's not very critical. What is the most important thing here is this calculation. How do you ensure that the gap remains 1 meter and all the 3 jumps become equal? And that is the most critical part. So this is the final, the way the table looks like. This is the gold, this is the silver, and this is the bronze. So obviously P10 has to be less than 87.6 because he doesn't finally get the bronze. So P10's range is between 87.2 to 87.6, and P8's range is between 82.5 and 82.9. Because why 82.9 is because I think P1 here had 82.9. So if you look at this is the final table which will emerge. The reds here are basically the valid throws in each of the rounds. So now if I go to the questions, which 2 players got the double? We know P8 and P10. Who won the silver medal? It's P1. P won the silver medal. Who threw the last javelin? P7, because he was finally the gold medalist. What was the final score of the silver medalist? That was, if you look at 88.6, so that's second option. And fifth one, which is the following the final score of P8. So as you see, P8 is between 82.5 and 82.9. So that's 82.7. And then how much did the gold medalist improve? Also, we saw that here, gold medalist improved by 2.4 meters, 1.2 each in 2 rounds. Therefore, that's the first option. Well, I hope that makes it clear to you guys that again repeating this P8. See, P8 is the last qualifier. So and already you have an 84.1 as P9. So P8 has to be more than 82.5 and below 84.1. Later on, we will see actually he will be less than 82.9 also, because 82.9 here it was P1. But anyways, if you look at this question, 81.9 is ruled out because it has to be more than 82.5, and this is ruled out because it has to be less than 84.1. So finally, it's 82.7 for P8. So as you saw, quite a complicated question, not to be done in your worst of the dreams, but some of these questions come at times just to catch you with the wrong foot, and I hope that none of you have fallen into this trap. I hope you've understood the solution. Thank you. Hello, and let's carry on with our LRDI coverage of slot 3 CAT 21. So let's now move on to the most easiest set which the students encountered in the third slot of LRDI, this bar graph of questions 7 to 10. Absolute sitter, not expected in an exam like CAT, but this time CAT had extreme cases, very difficult or very easy. So the choice of selection of caselets perhaps wasn't very difficult. I'm sure everybody would have attempted this. So this is the kind of a project-wise and employee-wise details given on how much each employee has worked on which project in terms of his monthly involvement. Okay, so there are 4 employees here, A, B, T, D, Abani, Bahani, Tinni, Dinny. I just call them A, B, T, D or A, B, D, T. A is red, B is green, D is black, and T is yellow. Okay. So now let's get to the questions directly here, because this is not one of those cases where you have to solve something. It's question by question. First question had 2 statements. The total project month was the same for all the 4 employees. Now, what do you mean by project month here? So if you look at this part of the condition, project month is the sum of the number of months he or she worked across the 5 projects. So if you look at A, let's just concentrate on A. So A in project 1 has worked for February, March, 2 months here, 2 months here. And this is a huge involvement in project 4, 5 months, July, August, September, October, November. So A in total has worked for 9 months. B, if you see, that is the green color, 2 here, April, May, June, July, 4 here, and 3 here. Again, 2, 4, 3, that adds up to 9. D, that's the black one, February, March, April, that's 3 in project 2. June, July, August, that's another 3 in project 3, 2 in project 4, and 1 in project 5. So 3, 3, 2, 1, that's also 9. And if you look at T, the yellow color, 2 here in project 1, 2 here, 3 in project 4, and 2 in project 5. 2 months, 2 months, 3 months, 2 months, that also 9. So all the 4 of them, their project months, each of them is 9, which means this statement is correct. The total employee month was the same for the 5 projects. Now, what do you mean by the employee month? Let's come to that. Is the sum of the number of months 4 employees worked in that project. So, for example, for project 1, it will be 2 plus 2 plus 2, 6. For project 2, it will be 3 plus 2, 5. For project 3, it will be 9. For project 4, it will be 10. And for project 5, it will be 6. So, as we see here, that it is not the same. So, only 1 is the correct answer. Question number 7, the right answer is the 4th option. Move on to question 8. Which employees did not work in multiple projects for any of the months? Did not work in multiple projects. So, if you look at each one of them individually, for example, A, the red bars, you see project 1 finished in April, or rather by end of March. Next project starts from May to June, then July. So no overlapping months for the red bars. No overlapping for the green bars also. No overlapping for the black bars also. But yellow bar, if you see project 4 and 5, there is a clear overlap here. September, the month of September is for project 4 and 5. So so yellow is gone. That means T is not there. So A, B, and D, that's again fourth option, have not worked in any multiple projects. 9, the project duration measured in terms of number of months is the time during which at least one employee worked in the project. Okay, which of the following pairs of projects has the same duration? For example, project 1 started in January and ended in March. So project 1, the total duration can be said to be 3 months, Jan to March. Project 2 starts in 1st Feb, goes up till end April, Feb, March, April, 3 months. So 1 and 2 have the same duration. 3 starts 1st April, goes on till end August, April, May, June, July, August, 5 months. Project 4 starts 1st July, goes on till end November, July, August, September, October, November. This is also 5 months. Project 6 starts on 1st September, goes on till end of December, 4 months. So 2 pairs are the answer. 1 and 2 is also correct. 3 and 4 are also correct. 1 and 2 are not in the options, but 3 and 4 are in the options. So that's the correct answer. Even project 1 and 2 would have been the correct answer. 10. The list of employees in decreasing order of annual completion index. Now, this is one of the questions will take some time to calculate. So let me list it down. A, B, D, and T. What do you mean by annual completion index? Now, annual completion index is the weighted average of the completion percentage assigned from the different projects, with the weights being the corresponding number of months. So for example, for A, 100% into 2, 100 into 2 for project 3, 180 into 5. So 100 into 2 is 200 plus 200 plus 400. So 900 months, each of them has got for 9 months. So the denominator is same for everybody. So A will be 800 by 9. B, 100 into 2, 200 here. 75 into 4, 300 here. So 200 plus 300, 500. And 90 into 3, 270. That's 770 for B. For D, that's the black color. 90 into 3, 270. 100 into 3, 300, 570. Plus 200, 770. Plus 100, that's 870. T, that's the yellow one, 80 into 2, 160. 200, 300, 200. That's 700 plus 160. That's 860. Decreasing order. So highest is A, D, that's first. Second is T. Third is A, and fourth is B. So D, T, A, B, that's first option. Close options, D, T, B, A, fourth option is also there. So we have to do this calculation. Denominator is meaningless here. All of them are 9 because the number of months is same for everybody. So as we saw this, flat 5 to 7 minutes, you can easily solve this entire question. After doing this, I'm sure students would have actually double checked their answers because they couldn't believe that in CAT they could get something so easy. But that's what happens. Sometimes easy things also make you feel insecure a bit. All in all, everybody should have attempted this and got full 12 marks in your pocket. Thank you. Hello, so let's further examine the slot 3 LRDI of CAT 21. And here we'll be discussing the question with respect to those reviewing of projects or questions. That's question 11 to 16. Okay, questions 11 to 16 we'll be reviewing. This is about the reviewers Amal, Bimal, and Komal. One of those questions which was not very simple, but if you would have given it adequate time, then this could have been managed. It was not a very difficult question. And remember, there were 6 questions up for grabs here. So there are 3 reviewers here, Amal, Bimal, and Komal. The task of selecting questions from a pool of 13 questions, questions 1 to 13. So question can be here created in 4 ways. First, the question can be created by SME. It is reviewed by A and then by B. So the order for the SME is, if SME creates it, it will be A and B followed by K if required. If it's created by A, then it first is reviewed by B, and then if B disapproves it, then it goes to K. If it's created by B, then it's first reviewed by K and then it goes to A. If it's created by K, it's first reviewed by A and then by B. So if you see A, B, K, a cyclical pattern has emerged. A will be reviewed by B, then K. B will be reviewed by K, then A. And K will be reviewed by A, then B. When individual creations happen. But when it is created by this SME, then both A and B will review it. And if both accept it, it gets accepted. If both reject it, it gets rejected. But if one accepts, one rejects, then it goes to K. So what you have to understand is that any question which has been reviewed by all three must have been created by SME. That's a very, very clear understanding. So now they have given you the information about which questions got accepted and which got rejected. So this table, what I have done is, out of 13 questions, 5 have got rejected, 2, 6, 9, 11, 12, and the remaining 8 have got accepted. And they have also given us who reviews which question. So for example, Amal reviews in total around 8 questions. Bimal reviews 2, 4, 6 to 9, that is again 4 to 6 to 8 questions. And Komal reviews 1 to 5, that is 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 questions. So question wise, I have just put it here in terms of who reviews which question. That you can easily make a table like this. It took some time in the exam, but if you followed a proper logical written approach, it was an easy question. For example, let's look at question 1. It was only reviewed by K and it got accepted. So obviously, if it's only reviewed by K and got accepted, who would have created it? K is the first one to review B's questions. So obviously, this must have been created by B and K has accepted it. That's clear? Question 2. All 3 of them have reviewed and it finally got rejected. So it is clear, if all 3 are reviewing, it has to be SME. Order is A, B together and then it goes to K. K definitely has rejected because it finally got rejected. Between A and B, I don't know. It can be accepted also, it can be rejected also. We have no idea about this. Question 3, A and K have reviewed it, finally got accepted. Now A and K review which questions? Which are created by B. Okay, which are created by B. But if it goes to A, which means that K has rejected it and A has accepted it. That's for sure. Because finally it has got accepted. So if it goes to the second person, which means first person must have rejected it. So K rejected, A accepted. Order is B, K, A. Question 4, again, all 3 have reviewed it, must be SME. Finally got selected, so K must have selected it. Between A and B, can't say. Question 5 is same as question 1. Definitely B has created it, K has accepted it, only K is reviewing it. Question 6, this is the difficult question. A and B are reviewing it, K doesn't do anything about it. Finally gets rejected. There are 2 situations emerging here. It can be created by SME. If it gets created by SME, that means A rejected it, B also rejected it, finally got rejected. If it's created by K, K's questions first go to A, then go to B. That means A definitely rejected it and B, in this case, also rejected it. So here it's clear that both A and B must have rejected this question, but in terms of who created it, it could be SME also, It could be K also. This is unclear. But that's for sure that A and B both have rejected. Coming to question 7. B and K have reviewed it. So obviously it must have been created by A. A's questions first go to B, then to K. B definitely has rejected this. K has accepted it, therefore finally got accepted. Question 8, all three reviewing must be SME. K has accepted it. Between A and B, can't say anything. Both have not accepted for sure, but one has accepted, one has rejected. Who accepted, who rejected, we don't know. Question 9, B and K, which means A must have created this question, went to B, went to K, finally got rejected, which means both B and K have rejected it for sure. Question 10, only reviewed by A, accepted, which means who A reviews whose questions first? K's questions, which means K must have created this, A has accepted it. A and K, which means B must have created it, finally gets rejected. B का question पहले K के पास जाता है, फिर A के पास. But since it is finally rejected, which means K and A both have rejected it. Question 12, BK, which means A must have got created it, went to B, went to K, finally got rejected. That means both B and K have rejected it. Question 13 is same as question 6. Absolutely no difference, except the fact that 13 gets accepted, which means that 13 can also be either SME or K. If it is SME, then both A and B must have accepted it. Then only it will get accepted. If it is K, K का question पहले A के पास जाता है, फिर B के पास जाता है. That means A could have rejected it and B must have accepted. मतलब B definitely has accepted this question. A could be tick or cross. So that answers my entire situation, and with the help of this table, you would be able to answer all the questions. Let us try to get to the questions. How many questions were definitely created by Amal? That means by A. So if you look at A, question 7, question 9, and question 12. 3 questions were definitely created by Amal. 7, 9, 12. So answer is 3. How many questions were definitely created by Komal? Komal is only one question sure shot. 6 and 13 we are not sure. Question 10 is sure shot, which means answer is 1. Only one question. Question number 10. 13. How many questions were definitely created by SMEs? Definitely. So 6 and 13 we can't include, but definitely 2, 4, and 8. 3 questions. 2, 4, 8. So answer is 3. These are all non-MCQs. How many questions were definitely disapproved by Bimal? Disapproved by Bimal. So अगर आप देखते हैं, definitely it's saying 6 for sure, 7 for sure, 9 for sure, 12 for sure. 6, 7, 9, 12. 6, 7, 9, 12. Question 6, 7, 9, 12, which means 4 questions have definitely been disapproved by Bimal. I hope that is clear. 4 questions have been definitely disapproved by Bimal. 15th, the approval ratio is the ratio of questions approved to reviewed. Amal. So Amal's minimum approval ratio we can find, and Amal's maximum approval ratio we can find. He has reviewed 8 questions that we know. Minimum, how many will he approve? Let's see that. A, minimum approval. Question 3 he has definitely approved. Question 10 he has definitely approved. So 2 minimum approvals he will do. And maximum approvals, how many can he do? So we will include 2, 3, 4, 8, 10, 13. So definitely he will reject 11 and 6, 2 of them out of 8, which means his maximum approvals can be 6. So 2 by 8 is 0.25 and 6 by 8 is 0.75. So lies between 0.25 and 0.75. Question 16. How many questions created by Amal or Bimal, that's A or B, were disapproved by at least one of the other reviewers? So if you look at the questions, A or B disapproved by any one of the other reviewers. So question 1, nobody disapproved. Question 3, K has disapproved, so 3 will be included here. Question 5, nobody disapproved. 7 will be included. So 3, 7, 9, 11, 12. 3, 7, 9, 11, 12. 5 questions. 3, 7, 9, 11, 12. 3, 7, 9, 11, and 12. 5 questions. So I hope that is clear to you. Absolutely. So as you saw, if you could create this table clearly defining who accepts and who rejects or multiple possibilities, all questions could have easily been answered. If you would have given it 15 minutes clear time, this question could have been definitely done and perhaps was required to be done, because javelin question was an absolute no-no. So therefore, bar graph question was very easy. The other question, or that mixture question, was manageable in less time. So you could have easily devoted 15-20 minutes to this question and got it correct. Thank you. I hope it was clear to you. Hello. So let's get to solving one of the caselets which appeared in slot 3 of CAT 21 LRDI section. We are talking of question 17 to 20, the question which was about mixtures. Okay, look, a little bit of an allegation kind of a question. So some maths mostly to be done with the help of averages and allegation here. So let us try to understand the question here. Each bottle mentioned here contains 50 ml of the fluid. That is a very critical point. Each bottle contains 50 ml of the fluid. The liquid in any bottle can be 100% pure or can have certain impurity. Pure is P, with impurity is I. Visually not possible to differentiate. There is a testing device which detects impurity as long as the percentage of impurity is 10% or more. Which means if impurity is 90%, it will detect. But if it is 91%, it will not detect. So 91 to 100% goes undetected. But anything 90% or less purity will get detected. So there is an example also which is trying to highlight the same logic. So if you have overall 90% impurity, it will detect. So if you have 80% pure, detects. 70% pure, detects. 95% pure, it will not detect. So anything above 90% purity will not detect. So let's get to the questions. First one, 5 ml of content of bottle A is mixed with 5 ml of content from bottle B. So you are taking equal content from the two bottles. The resultant mixture, when tested, detects the presence of I, which means the mixture is 90% or less pure. Then only it has detected I. If it is known that bottle A contains only P, so bottle A contains only P, which is 100% pure. Bottle B, whatever it will percentage is there, the combined percentage is 90% or less. Then only detection is possible. Which means the purity percentage in bottle B will be 80% or less. Then only the average will be 90 or less. So out of 5 ml, so 80% or less, you are taking 5 ml of content from bottle B. But remember, bottle B itself has 50 ml of fluid. So what is 80% of 50 ml, which means 40, which means impurity is 20%. So the impurity will be 10 ml or more. I hope it's getting. The purity is 80% or less, which means impurity is 20% or more. So 20% of 50 ml, that is 10 ml. So greater than 10 ml will be the impurity content in bottle B. Because here it's clear, purity is 80% or less. So impurity is 20% or more. Now here there's a very high chance that you might have marked 1 ml here, but 1 ml will be incorrect. Let's come to 18. There are 4 bottles. Each bottle is known to contain only P or only I. Each bottle is containing only P or only I. They will be considered to be collectively ready for dispatch if all of them contain only P. In minimum, how many tests is it possible to ascertain whether these 4 bottles are collectively ready for dispatch? Now, out of the 4 bottles, we don't know which one is only P and which was in only I. Only P means it's 100% pure. Only I means it's 0% pure. So, if I mix all the 4 bottles, okay, if there are 3 P's and 1 I, so 3P into 100 and this is 0, the weighted average will be what? 3 into 100 plus by 4. So my weighted average will become 75% purity, which means it will get detected. That's clear? So in one attempt, the moment it gets detected means at least 1 I is there. And if it doesn't get detected, means all 4 are P's. Because since one contains only I, even 1 bottle of I will detect impurity out of 4 bottles. If there are 3 pure and 1 impure, combined 75% purity happens, it will get detected. So therefore, the answer here will be minimum there will be how many tests possible to ascertain whether they are ready to dispatch? Only 1 test. Just do 1 test. If there is no impurity tested, which means all 4 are P's and they are collectively ready for dispatch. If there is an impurity detected, there is minimum 1 I. All are not P's, which means it cannot be sent for dispatch. So the answer to 18 will be only 1 test is required. 19. There are 4 bottles. It is known that 3 of them contain only P. So 3 bottles, the purity percentage is 100. While 1 contains 80% P. So 1 bottle contains 80% P. What is the minimum number of tests required to definitely identify the bottle, which means I need to identify this bottle. I have 3 pure bottles, 100% purity, and 1 bottle with 80% purity. How do I determine that which bottle is that of 80%? Kitna test mujhe isko karna padega? Now you see, 3 are pure, 1 is impure. The impure is 80. So the moment I test, let's say my first test 1 will be 2 bottles. If both are P's, then there is no detection, I know. But the moment if I test 2 bottles and an impurity is detected, that means out of those 2 bottles, one of them has to be the I bottle. With 100 or 80 lenge, average 90 आएगा, detection होगा. So my first test will be with 2 bottles, any 2 random bottles. What can be the possibility? It is tested fine, which means both these bottles were P. If it is tested incorrect, that means impurity is detected. That means it's 1P and 1I. If it's both P, then I know that the other two bottles which I have not yet touched, एक उसमें से I है. That's clear. Now what I will do, I will take one of these bottles. Next test will be one of this bottle plus one other bottle. Now, if these two also are okay, then the fourth bottle is defective. And if out of these two, it is impurity is detected, that means this bottle is defective. That's clear. And in this case, if initially my first test there was impurity detected, one was P, one was I, what will I do? I don't know which one of them is P, which one of them is I. मैं उन दोनों में से कोई एक बॉटल लूंगा, प्लस आई विल टेक वन अदर बॉटल. अगर इन दोनों ये दोनों सही है, then the bottle which I did not take is the impurity. और इन दोनों में से अगर impurity आ गया, that means the bottle I took is impure. So in nutshell, you only need two tests. First test with random any two bottles. Second test depends on the result of the first test. If first test was positive, then I will take one bottle from the tested two bottles and one bottle from the untested two bottles. अगर वो दोनों में भी positive आ गया, no detection, that means जो bottle अभी तक test नहीं हुआ है वो गड़बड़ है. और अगर second test में गड़बड़ आया है, that means the third bottle which I took is the defective bottle. तो दो test में हो गया. Case 2, first test itself impurity detected. That means इन दोनों में एक bottle गड़बड़ है. This means बाकी दोनों bottle अच्छा है, उसमें से एक लीजिए, प्लस जो आपने टेस्ट किया उसमें से एक लीजिए. इन दोनों में अगर impurity नहीं आया, that means the other bottle which you tested is impure. इन दोनों में से आ गया, that means the bottle which you have taken and you have taken earlier also for testing, again you have tested impure, which means that common bottle is the impure bottle. So in net you will only need two tests. Okay. I can also kind of name it if that's easier. Let's say I name the bottles A, B, C, D. Test 1 is A plus B. It's okay. Then it is A plus C. If this is also okay, then D is the impure bottle. Okay. And if this is not okay, then C is the impure bottle. That is very clear. That is case 1. Case 2 is A plus B is impure. So which means I will take A plus C. If this is also impure, then A is the impure bottle. And if this is pure, A plus C is pure, then B is the impure. That's clear. अगर A B लिया pure आया तो C D में गड़बड़ है. A B लिया impure आया तो A B में गड़बड़ है. I hope that's clear now. 20th question. There are 4 bottles. It is known that either 1 or 2 of them contain only P. 1 or 2 out of 4. While the remaining ones contain 85%. So out of 4 bottles, 1 or 2 contain 100% purity, which means 2 or 3 contain 85% purity. What is the minimum number of tests required to ascertain the exact number of bottles containing only P? Now, only P will either be 1 bottle or 2 bottles. That's clear? Now, case 1. I have 1 with 100% and I have 3 with 85%. So the weighted average here will become how much? 100 plus 255 plus 355 by 4, that is less than 90, which means impurity will be detected. Case 2, there will be 2 bottles of 100 and 2 bottles of 85. That's 200 plus 170. That's 370 by 4. That's greater than 90. Impurity will not be detected. Greater than 90 में डिटेक्ट होगा नहीं. तो मुझे एक ही अटेम्प्ट चाहिए. चारों बॉटल को हम एक संग करेंगे. अगर impurity आया, which means there was only one P. 3 were 85%. अगर impurity नहीं आया, that means there were 2 of 100%, 2 of 85. So net, I only need one test where I'll take all the 4 bottles together. So the answer to question 20 will be the 4th option. So I hope you have got it. It was a very simple. In fact, you didn't even use the cross rule of alligation because more or less the quantum was same everywhere. So ratio of mixing was same. Therefore, simple averages worked here rather than weighted averages. Generally, except for the last question, most of them worked. Okay. So as you saw here, it's a little surprising for this kind of a caselet to come in LRDI, more or less a maths kind of a caselet, but nevertheless simple, and every question is independent of each other. So I am sure that most of you would have got 3 out of 4 correct. I hope it was helpful. Thank you.